I think everybody is doing innovation. Sometimes it's visible, sometimes it's not.
Bahrain, pre-season. The garage doors open, and Lewis Hamilton walks out in Ferrari red. But something is different.
As where last year we were locked into a car that ultimately I inherited.
This isn't the broken man who went an entire year without a single trophy. This isn't the weary, isolated figure swallowed by silence and struggle. This is something else entirely. Something colder, sharper, predatory. Because while the world was writing his obituary, Lewis Hamilton was in a simulator for 10 months, rebuilding himself from the ground up. The question isn't whether he's back. The real question is, has Ferrari handed a reset Lewis Hamilton the most dangerous weapon on the grid? And if the FIA is already holding emergency meetings about what the SF26 is doing on track,
A bit of my DNA is within it, so I'm more connected to this one.
what exactly did Ferrari build? Stay with me, because this story is just getting started. Let's go back 12 months. 2025, a season that should never have happened the way it did. A 7-time world champion, 0 trophies, 0 podiums, a paddock whispering about contracts, about decline, about whether Lewis had anything left. The outbursts were uncharacteristic, the silence was deafening, and for the first time in his career, Hamilton looked genuinely lost inside a racing car. But that 2025 season wasn't just a winless drought, it was the trigger. Because Lewis Hamilton doesn't break, he rebuilds. He spent the entire winter clearing the decks, total factory reboot, body, mind, and mentality. His words, he admitted he forgot who he was for a moment. But then he said something else. He called 2026 one hell of a season. Not a hope, not a wish, a promise. And then the SF26 rolled out of the Bahrain garage, and the paddock went very, very quiet. Because what happened next wasn't just impressive lap times, it was something deeper, something that made rival engineers stop, look at each other, and start making phone calls. Ferrari didn't just build a fast car, they may have found a gray area in the regulations that nobody else had touched. And this is where the story gets dark. On the surface, the headline grabber was Charles Leclerc's blistering 1 minute 31.922, a lap time that turned heads across the entire paddock. Andrea Stella, McLaren's own team principal, was moved to label Ferrari and Mercedes as the absolute teams to beat in 2026. That alone felt like a victory lap for Maranello. But the engineers weren't watching the lap times, they were watching the starts. During the FIA-mandated start tests, Lewis Hamilton launched from 5th on the grid and arrived at turn 1 in first position. Not gradually, not competitively, instantly, violently, as if the other cars were anchored to the asphalt. McLaren's Andrea Stella didn't celebrate that moment. He pushed the FIA to change the start procedures entirely. Think about that. A rival team principal immediately lobbying the governing body because Ferrari's launch advantage was that disturbing. But here's the twist nobody was prepared for. The starts were just the visible part. Underneath the SF26, something far more controversial was happening in the hybrid system, something that forced the FIA into emergency technical meetings before the season even began. This is where the story changes completely. During the second week of Bahrain testing, rival engineers noticed a pattern that didn't add up. The SF26 wasn't building speed progressively out of slow corners. It was releasing energy instantly, a violent, almost surgical hit of electrical power, perfectly synchronized with the thermal engine. No delay, no buildup, direct. Normally, when a manufacturer chases that kind of aggressive electrical peak, they pay a price. Temperature penalties, system degradation, consistency issues on long runs. Ferrari paid none of those prices. The red car showed explosive performance and maintained it, run after run after run. That set off every alarm in the paddock, because if you achieve peak electrical delivery without thermal sacrifice or consistency loss, you haven't just found a setup advantage, you found a structural one built into the architecture of the power unit itself. Rival teams began pushing the FIA to review dynamic deployment patterns under real track conditions, not static bench tests, real conditions, because the SF26 was achieving behaviors the regulations hadn't anticipated in sufficient detail. The FIA responded by designing new tests focused on compression, temperatures, and hybrid behavior in traction phases, not as a direct accusation, as a preventive measure to close a gray window that Ferrari and Ferrari alone had walked through. Meanwhile, on the track, Maranello kept rolling. Fred Vasseurs' response to the pressure? A masterclass in calm defiance. His message to rivals worried about the launch system was simple. If you're not convinced your car is safe to start, you're welcome to start from the pit lane. That's not arrogance. That's a team that knows exactly what it has built. So what does all of this actually mean? First, for Lewis Hamilton specifically, the SF26 has given him something priceless, a car that responds logically to setup changes. Telemetry from Leclerc's fastest laps showed that a single setup tweak dropped his time by 0.3 on the same compound. The simulator work Hamilton has been doing for 10 months is translating to the track surface. For a driver who relies on a specific front-end field to extract his trademark late braking performance, having a predictable, responsive car is worth everything. Second, for the championship, the hybrid advantage Ferrari has found targets the most critical phase of every single race: starts, corner exits, the first 150 meters of every straight. If that advantage holds through regulatory scrutiny, Hamilton can lead from the front and dictate the rhythm of entire Grand Prix. But third, and this is the risk nobody is talking about loudly enough, if the FIA implements new dynamic control protocols mid-season and limits what Ferrari has optimized, the hit won't be a small aerodynamic adjustment. It will strike the heart of the power unit, the entire energy architecture of the car. And that is where the championship could experience a turn nobody predicted. Scenario 1. The FIA finds no violation. Ferrari's hybrid architecture is declared legal. Hamilton leads race after race from the front, manages energy better than anyone on the grid, and the 8th world title becomes inevitable by August. Scenario 2. The FIA introduces mid-season protocol changes. Ferrari's launch advantage evaporates. McLaren's top-end Mercedes power, already pulling away at high speed in Bahrain, becomes the dominant force. And Hamilton finds himself fighting the same battle he lost in 2025, but in red. Scenario 3. The battle is never truly resolved. Ferrari and McLaren trade victories all season. The championship goes to the final race, and Lewis Hamilton, the man who forgot who he was, decides it all in the last lap of the last corner of the year. Dynasties aren't built in testing, but sometimes they begin there. Has Ferrari truly found an advantage the FIA cannot touch? Or is the SF26's greatest weapon not the wing, not the turbo, not the hybrid, but the man now sitting inside it, with nothing to lose and everything to prove? One thing is certain, Melbourne isn't just the first race of 2026, it's the first answer. And if Lewis Hamilton takes that lead into turn 1, you'll know the reset is real. Tell me in the comments, do you believe Ferrari's hybrid system survives FIA scrutiny? Or does the real championship begin the moment the regulations catch up?